Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth Alliance flagship Titan's Resolve, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. The Deep Space Patrol had been routine for weeks, monitoring communications from the Outer Rim territories, while Earth continued its long application process to join the Galactic Council. Lieutenant Katie Bell sat at her station, headphones on as she filtered through the usual chatter of merchant ships and exploration vessels. "Admiral, I'm picking up something strange," Katie said, her voice cutting through the quiet hum of the bridge. "There's a massive signal coming from Council space, but it's not on any of their official channels." Jack turned toward her station. "What kind of signal?" "It's a broadcast transmission, sir. High power, multiple frequencies. It's being sent to every system in the galaxy." Katie's fingers moved quickly across her controls. "Sir, it's overriding our communications array. I can't shut it off." Before Jack could respond, every screen on the bridge flickered and went dark. Then, without warning, they all lit up with the same image. A vast chamber filled with strange alien architecture appeared before them. At the center stood a tall insectoid creature wearing ornate robes that marked him as a member of the Galactic Council's ruling class. "Citizens of the galaxy," the creature spoke, his voice cold and mechanical through the translation systems. "I am Grand Arbitrator Veltar of the Zenthi Empire. Today, the Galactic Council demonstrates the consequences of defying our sacred laws." The camera angle shifted, revealing thousands of beings kneeling in perfect rows across a massive plaza. They looked remarkably similar to humans with pale skin and dark hair, but their faces showed a serene acceptance that sent chills down Jack's spine. Men, women, and children were arranged in orderly groups, their hands bound behind their backs. Katie gasped beside him. "Admiral, those look like humans." "The inhabitants of Kepler 442b have violated Council Resolution 847 Delta regarding population control measures," Veltar continued. "Despite repeated warnings, they have exceeded the maximum population limit established for their resource allocation zone. The Council has determined that corrective action must be taken." A fleet of metallic drones descended from the sky above the plaza. Each one was the size of a small aircraft, their surfaces gleaming with weapon systems that Jack recognized as energy disruptors. The bound beings below looked up at them with what appeared to be curiosity rather than fear. "No," Jack whispered, realizing what was about to happen. "Beginning population adjustment protocol," Veltar announced. "Let this serve as an example to all worlds considering Council membership. Order must be maintained. Resources must be properly allocated. Defiance will not be tolerated." The drones opened fire simultaneously. Beams of brilliant white light swept across the plaza in perfectly coordinated patterns. The beings below simply vanished, their bodies disintegrating instantly. There were no screams, no panic, no attempts to run. They had been drugged or conditioned to accept their fate with quiet dignity. Jack watched in horror as the systematic execution continued. Row after row of innocent people disappeared under the drone's weapons. The camera captured every moment in clinical detail, showing the efficiency of the Council's killing machines. Children dissolved beside their parents. Elderly beings who could barely kneel were eliminated with the same cold precision as healthy adults. 50,000 excess inhabitants have been processed, Veltar announced after what felt like hours, but had only been minutes. The population of Kepler 442b now complies with Council standards. Their remaining citizens will be relocated to appropriate labor assignments throughout Council space. The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Jack stared at the blank screens, his mind struggling to process what he had just witnessed. These were the beings that Earth had been trying to join for decades. The supposed guardians of galactic peace and order had just committed genocide and broadcast it to the entire galaxy. "Katie." "Get me President Hayes immediately," Jack ordered, his voice tight with controlled rage. Priority 1 communication. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on every human ship and colony. Captain Lisa Grant stood frozen on the bridge of her exploration vessel New Horizon. Her crew gathered around her in shocked silence. Dr. Ben Clark, her science officer, was the first to speak. "Captain, we've been monitoring that system for months. The Kepler civilization was peaceful. They were artists and farmers. Their only technology was agricultural. They weren't a threat to anyone." Lisa nodded slowly, her hands clenched into fists. "Get me a full report on everything we know about Kepler 442b. I want to know why this happened." "On Earth, President Ryan Hayes was in his office when every screen in the building activated with the Council's broadcast. He watched the massacre alongside millions of other humans across the planet. His Secretary of Defense Maria Santos burst into his office just as the transmission ended. "Mr. President, every communication network on Earth just carried that signal. The entire planet saw it." Ryan stood slowly, his face pale but his eyes burning with anger. "Maria, contact General Paul Mitchell immediately. I want an emergency session of the Defense Council in 1 hour. And get me our ambassador to the Galactic Council." "Sir, Ambassador Moore is already requesting immediate contact. She's been trying to reach Council headquarters for the past 20 minutes, but they're not responding to her calls." Across Earth cities, crowds were gathering in the streets. The footage of the Kepler massacre was being replayed on every news network. Protesters began forming outside government buildings, demanding answers. How could Earth consider joining an organization that had just committed such an atrocity? In his apartment in New York, investigative journalist Chris Peterson was already pulling up everything he could find about Council resolution. At 47 Delta, his contacts in the intelligence community were sending him fragments of classified information. What he was discovering made his blood run cold. "Population control measures," he muttered to himself as he read through the leaked documents. "Resource allocation protocols. This isn't the first time they've done this." Back aboard the Titan's Resolve, Admiral Jack Morrison was speaking directly with President Hayes via encrypted communication. The president's image filled the main screen, his expression grim. "Admiral, I want you to begin discreet preparations for defensive operations. Don't make any aggressive moves, but be ready for anything. After what we just saw, I don't trust the Council's intentions toward humanity." "Understood, Mr. President. What about our membership application?" President Hayes was quiet for a long moment. "Admiral, after witnessing that massacre, I'm not sure we want to be members of an organization that considers genocide an acceptable form of population control. Prepare your fleet. Something tells me we're going to need it." Commander Alex Turner received his orders 3 days after the broadcast. The mission briefing was classified at the highest levels, known only to President Hayes and a handful of military leaders. Alex stood in the secure briefing room aboard Earth's most advanced stealth ship, the Shadow Walker, studying the holographic display of the Kepler system. "Your job is simple but dangerous," General Paul Mitchell explained over the encrypted communication link. "We need to know what really happened on Kepler 442b. The official Council report claims they were overpopulated and using too many resources. We don't believe that." Dr. Amy Foster, the mission xenobiologist, stepped forward. She had volunteered for the assignment after watching the massacre footage. "General, our preliminary analysis of the broadcast shows signs of advanced agricultural development on that planet. The background imagery suggests they had solved several major food production problems, which is exactly why we need to investigate," Mitchell replied. "Take your team in quietly. Document everything. Get us proof of what really happened." Sergeant Jake Williams, their communications specialist, was already running diagnostics on the ship's stealth systems. The Shadow Walker used experimental technology that could mask their presence from most Council sensors. "Commander, we'll need to avoid the main shipping lanes. Council patrols have increased since the broadcast." Alex nodded and turned to his small crew. "We launch in 6 hours. This mission is voluntary. Anyone who wants out can leave now with no questions asked." Nobody moved. The journey to Kepler 442b took 8 days of careful navigation through asteroid fields and nebula clouds. When they finally reached the system, what they found was worse than anyone had imagined. The planet's surface was scarred with massive burn marks where cities had once stood. Orbital debris suggested that the Council had destroyed every satellite and space station. "Taking us down to the surface," Alex announced as he piloted the ship through the planet's atmosphere. "Amy, start scanning for any signs of life." Dr. Foster worked frantically at her instruments. "I'm reading massive ecological damage. The soil composition shows signs of chemical weapons. They didn't just kill the people, Alex. They poisoned the entire agricultural system." Jake intercepted communication signals from Council cleanup crews still working on the planet's surface. "Commander, they're systematically destroying all evidence. Burning libraries, demolishing research facilities, even digging up graveyards. They landed in what had once been a major city. The buildings were reduced to ash, but Amy's instruments detected something underneath the destruction. There are underground structures that survived. They might contain information about what these people were really doing. The team spent hours exploring the ruins. In the basement of what appeared to have been a scientific research center, they found intact computer systems protected by energy shields. Jake worked to access the data while Amy collected samples of the local soil and plant life. "Commander, you need to see this," Jake called out, his voice filled with excitement and horror. These people weren't just farmers. They had developed a new type of crop that could grow in almost any environment. It could have fed billions of people across the galaxy. Amy looked up from her samples. "The genetic modifications are incredible. These plants could grow in space stations, on desert worlds, even in toxic environments. This technology could have ended hunger on a galactic scale." Alex studied the data streaming across Jake's screen. Communication logs showed months of negotiations between the Kepler government and various council representatives. They were trying to share this technology freely with everyone. The council wanted exclusive control of it. "Look at this," Jake pointed to a series of messages. The council demanded that Kepler hand over all their agricultural research to the core worlds only. When they refused and said they wanted to help everyone, the council issued the population control ultimatum. The pieces were falling into place. The council had not executed 50,000 people because of overpopulation. They had committed genocide because Kepler refused to give them a monopoly on technology that could revolutionize food production throughout the galaxy. Amy's voice was shaking with anger as she read through research notes. These people had already started sending seeds and technical data to other worlds. They were trying to help colonies that were struggling with food shortages, which means the council killed them to maintain scarcity. Alex realized, if everyone could grow unlimited food, the council couldn't control resource distribution anymore. Jake intercepted another council transmission. "Commander, there are 3 other human colonies that have received similar warnings about population limits. New Boston, Terra Nova, and Harmony Station. The council is using the same tactics." Alex immediately contacted Earth through their secure communication system. President Hayes appeared on their screen, his face grim as Alex reported their findings. "Mr. President, this wasn't about population control. It was about controlling food distribution throughout the galaxy. The council maintains power by keeping other worlds dependent on them for resources." Hayes was quiet for a long moment. "Commander, how long before they move against our colonies?" "Based on the timeline we found here, probably weeks. The council issues warnings, waits 30 days, then acts. New Boston got their warning 2 days ago." The president's expression hardened. "Get back to Earth immediately. Bring everything you found. We need proof when we present this to the galactic community." As the Shadow Walker prepared to leave Kepler 442b, Amy made one final discovery in the ruins of a school. Children's artwork covered the walls, showing peaceful scenes of families working together in vast gardens. The art depicted humans and aliens from dozens of different species, all living and working together in harmony. They weren't just developing food technology, she told Alex. They were building a model for how different species could cooperate. No wonder the council saw them as a threat. Jake picked up one last transmission as they left orbit. Council forces were moving toward the human colonies. "Commander, we don't have weeks. Council fleets are already heading toward New Boston and Terra Nova." Alex pushed the Shadow Walker's engines to maximum speed. "Jake, send a priority message to Admiral Morrison. Tell him to start moving defense fleets toward our outer colonies immediately." "What about our application to join the council?" Amy asked. Alex looked back at the dying planet below them, its surface still smoking from the council's weapons. "After what we found here, I don't think we want to join them anymore. I think we need to stop them. The evidence they carried would change everything." The council's facade of benevolent peacekeeping was about to be exposed as a system of galactic oppression maintained through fear, genocide, and the deliberate perpetuation of scarcity. Humanity had sought membership in the galactic community, but instead they had discovered that the community desperately needed liberation from its supposed guardians. President Ryan Hayes stood before the joint session of Earth's United Parliament, every seat filled as representatives from across the planet gathered for the most important address in human history. The evidence from Commander Turner's mission was displayed on screens throughout the chamber, showing the horrific truth about the Kepler massacre and the Council's real intentions. "Fellow humans," Hayes began, his voice carrying to every corner of Earth and beyond to the colonies scattered across space. We have discovered that the Galactic Council is not the organization we believed them to be. They are not peacekeepers. They are not protectors. They are tyrants who maintain power through genocide and the deliberate starvation of entire worlds. The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives saw the evidence for the first time. Images of the destroyed agricultural research on Kepler 442b filled the screens, along with intercepted council communications discussing resource control protocols and population management strategies. The people of Kepler died because they tried to share technology that could have ended hunger throughout the galaxy, Hayes continued. The council murdered 50,000 innocent beings to protect their monopoly on food distribution. And now they are coming for us. Secretary of Defense Maria Santos stepped forward with additional intelligence reports. 3 of our colonies have received population control warnings from the council. New Boston, Terra Nova, and Harmony Station are all scheduled for what the council calls corrective action within the next 30 days. The Parliament fell silent as the full scope of the threat became clear. Earth itself would likely be next if they continued pursuing council membership. The very act of seeking to join the galactic community had painted a target on every human world. Therefore, President Hayes announced, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to declare, I am formally withdrawing Earth's application for council membership. Furthermore, we do not recognize the council's authority over any human world colony or territory. We will not submit to their demands. We will not allow them to murder our people. The chamber exploded in applause, but Hayes raised his hand for silence. This decision will likely mean war. The council has never been defied before. They will come for us with everything they have. But we cannot stand by and watch genocide happen when we have the power to stop it. Admiral Jack Morrison was already mobilizing the Earth Defense Fleet from his flagship, the Titan's Resolve. Every available ship was being recalled from patrol duties and scientific missions. The human military was small compared to the Council's massive enforcement fleets, but they had advantages that their enemies did not understand. Fleet Admiral Nicole Parker took command of the outer system defenses, positioning her ships near the asteroid belt, where they could use the rocky debris as cover. Her tactical staff worked around the clock to develop new strategies based on humanity's long history of warfare. The Council fights like they govern, she explained to her officers during a strategy meeting. They rely on overwhelming force and expect immediate submission. They've never faced an enemy that fights back creatively. Captain Steve Rodriguez commanded the battleship Liberty's Edge, one of Earth's most powerful warships. His weapons officer, Lieutenant Dana Walsh, was working with engineer Bobby Chen to retrofit their ship with experimental weapon systems developed from Council technology, captured during previous encounters. The Council's weapons are more advanced than ours, Dana reported during the modification process, but they're designed for intimidation and mass destruction. Our weapons are built for ship-to-ship combat. In a direct fight, we might have the advantage. Bobby finished installing new shield generators stolen from a Council supply depot months earlier. Their technology is impressive, but it's not designed for adaptation. Everything is standardized across their entire fleet. If we find one weakness, it applies to all their ships. Meanwhile, Earth's colonies were preparing for siege. The colonists on New Boston had received their Council ultimatum 3 days after the Kepler broadcast, demanding immediate population reduction and resource quotas that would have meant starvation for thousands. Governor Linda Davis had responded by declaring independence from Council authority and requesting military support from Earth. We came out here to build new lives, she told her colonial assembly. We're not going back to Earth, and we're not submitting to genocidal maniacs. If they want our world, they'll have to take it. Similar declarations were coming from Terra Nova and Harmony Station. The human colonies were small and poorly defended, but their populations were united in their refusal to submit to the Council's demands. The Council's response came exactly as expected. Grand Arbitrator Veltar issued a galaxy-wide broadcast from the Council's capital world, his insectoid features twisted with cold anger as he addressed what he clearly saw as unprecedented defiance. The humans of Earth have chosen to reject the lawful authority of the Galactic Council, he announced. This rebellion cannot be tolerated. The stability of galactic civilization depends on absolute compliance with Council directives. Battlemaster Korthan appeared beside Veltar, his reptilian face scarred from centuries of crushing rebellions across the galaxy. I am dispatching the 3rd Enforcement Fleet to human space. They will have 30 standard days to surrender unconditionally or face complete annihilation. The broadcast showed massive Council warships beginning to move toward human territory. Each vessel was the size of a small city, bristling with weapons capable of destroying entire planets. The Third Enforcement Fleet had never been defeated in over 200 years of operations. President Hayes called another emergency session as soon as the Council's ultimatum was received. 30 days, he told the assembled leaders. They're giving us 30 days to surrender completely or they'll destroy every human world. General Paul Mitchell presented the military assessment. Mr. President, the Council fleet outnumbers us 10-1. Their ships are larger and more heavily armed. In a conventional battle, we cannot win. Then we don't fight a conventional battle, Hayes replied. Throughout human history, we've won wars by refusing to fight the way our enemies expected. We adapt, we improvise. We find ways to turn our weaknesses into strengths. Admiral Morrison's voice came through the communication system from his flagship. Mr. President, the fleet is ready. Our ships are smaller and faster than theirs. We can use hit-and-run tactics, force them to fight in asteroid fields and nebulae where their size becomes a disadvantage. The President stood and looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. 30 days from now, the Council fleet will arrive expecting to find a defeated and surrendering human race. Instead, they're going to find something they've never encountered before. They're going to find humans who refuse to kneel. Across human space, preparations for war intensified. Colonists dug underground shelters while military engineers prepared defensive positions. Scientists worked frantically to develop new weapons and countermeasures. Most importantly, every human settlement began broadcasting the evidence of the Kepler massacre to any alien species willing to listen. The Council had ruled through fear for 1,000 years, but fear only worked when people believed resistance was hopeless. For the first time in galactic history, someone was preparing to prove that the Council could be defeated. Humanity was about to teach the galaxy that tyrants could fall. The Council fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system exactly 30 days after their ultimatum, expecting to find humanity ready to surrender. Instead, they found Captain Tony Martinez waiting for them with a small flotilla of human destroyers positioned near Pluto's orbit. His flagship, the Defiant Star, was barely a tenth the size of the smallest Council vessel. But Tony had no intention of backing down. Council fleet, this is Captain Martinez of the Earth Defense Force. He broadcast on all frequencies. You are not welcome in human space. Turn around now or face the consequences. Battlemaster Corthan's response came through the communication systems with obvious amusement. Little human, your entire force could not scratch the hull of my flagship. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick. We'll see about that, Tony muttered to his crew. All ships execute attack pattern Delta. Show them what humans do when cornered. The human destroyers scattered in all directions, their engines burning bright as they accelerated toward the massive Council ships. The Council fleet opened fire with their primary weapons, expecting to vaporize the small human vessels instantly. Instead, the destroyers weaved through the incoming fire with impossible agility, their pilots using techniques developed during Earth's atmospheric wars. Tony's ship dove under the belly of a Council battleship, firing every weapon he had at what his sensors identified as the shield generator. The explosion that followed lit up space for thousands of kilometers, and suddenly the massive alien vessel was vulnerable. All ships, focus fire on the disabled battleship, Tony ordered. Hit them while their shields are down. The other human captains followed his lead, swarming the crippled Council ship like angry insects. Within minutes, the battleship was destroyed, its debris spreading across space. The Council fleet had not lost a single ship in over 50 years, and now they had lost one to a force they had dismissed as insignificant. Battlemaster Corthan's anger was visible even through the alien translation systems. Impossible. How did such primitive vessels destroy a battleship? Because you've been fighting the same battles for centuries, Tony replied over the open channel. You expect your enemies to line up and trade fire like gentlemen. Humans don't fight like gentlemen. We fight to win. The battle escalated quickly as more Council ships moved to engage the human flotilla. Tony knew his small force could not win a prolonged engagement, but that was not the plan. His job was to delay the Council fleet long enough for Earth's main defenses to prepare, and to show the galaxy that the supposedly invincible Council could be hurt. Defiant Star to all ships, Tony broadcast. We've done what we came to do. Time to go. The human destroyers disengaged from battle, their engines pushing them toward the inner system faster than the Council ships could follow. They had lost 2 vessels in the engagement, but they had destroyed 3 Council ships and damaged several others. More importantly, they had proven that humans would fight back. The war spread quickly across multiple star systems as Council enforcement fleets moved to crush the human rebellion. On Mars, Colonel Frank Thompson coordinated planetary defense systems that turned the red planet into a fortress. Underground bunkers protected civilian populations while surface installations fired at any Council ship that came within range. "They're trying to land ground forces," Frank reported to Earth Command during one of the early attacks. "But their soldiers are not prepared for guerrilla warfare. We're picking them off in small groups." Commander Rachel Miller led resistance operations from hidden bases in the asteroid belt, using the rocky debris as cover for hit-and-run attacks against Council supply lines. Her pilots had grown up navigating the dangerous asteroid fields, giving them advantages that the Council's standardized tactics could not counter. "The Council fights like they govern," Rachel explained to her squadron leaders. "Everything is planned and predictable. They cannot adapt when we do something unexpected." Dr. Ben Clark, working from his laboratory on the exploration vessel New Horizon, made the discovery that would change the entire war. While analyzing captured Council technology, he found the critical weakness that human tacticians had been searching for. The Council's enforcement drones are controlled by a central artificial intelligence, he explained to Captain Lisa Grant. "The AI uses historical data to predict enemy movements and coordinate attacks, but it has no data on human military tactics because we've never fought in space before." Lisa immediately understood the implications. "So every time we do something new or unexpected, their system has to create new algorithms on the spot." "Exactly. And while it's processing new data, there's a delay in their response time. If we can overwhelm their systems with too many unexpected tactics at once, we can create gaps in their coordination." The information was quickly transmitted to every human commander in the field. Admiral Jack Morrison incorporated the discovery into a new battle strategy that emphasized constant tactical innovation and unpredictable attack patterns. The turning point came during the Battle of Terra Nova, where the Council had sent a massive fleet to make an example of the rebellious colony. Fleet Admiral Nicole Parker arrived with the main Earth Defense Force just as Council ships began bombarding the planet's surface. "All ships, implement Chaos Protocol," Nicole ordered. "I want every captain to use a different attack pattern. No coordination, no formation flying. Make it impossible for their AI to predict what we'll do next." The human fleet scattered in all directions, each ship attacking independently using tactics ranging from ancient naval maneuvers to completely improvised strategies. Some ships attacked head-on while others used stealth approaches. A few captains even rammed their vessels into Council ships, something the alien AI had never encountered before. The Council fleet's coordination began to break down as their central AI struggled to process the chaotic human tactics. Ships fired on empty space where they expected human vessels to be, while others collided with each other as their automated systems failed to account for unexpected human movements. Captain Steve Rodriguez, commanding the Liberty's Edge, led a direct assault on the Council flagship. His weapons officer, Dana Walsh, had modified their main guns to fire in rapid bursts rather than the single powerful shots that Council shields were designed to deflect. Their shields adapt to specific weapon frequencies, Dana explained as she targeted the enemy ship. "But if we keep changing frequencies randomly, they can't adjust fast enough." The Liberty's Edge pounded the Council flagship with dozens of different weapon types, each firing at different intervals and frequencies. The alien ship's shields flickered and failed as its systems tried desperately to adapt to the constantly changing attacks. "This is for Kepler," Steve said as he fired the killing shot that destroyed the Council flagship. The victory at Terra Nova marked the beginning of the Council's first military defeat in over 2 centuries. Word of the battle spread quickly throughout the galaxy, carried by the communication networks that the Council had used to broadcast their threats. Intelligence officer Sam Wright, working aboard Captain Grant's ship New Horizon, intercepted dozens of messages from other species across the galaxy. "Captain, we're receiving communications from worlds that have been under Council oppression for generations. They want to know how we're winning." Lisa realized that the war was about to expand far beyond humanity's conflict with the Council. Sam, start broadcasting our tactical discoveries to anyone who will listen. If other species are ready to fight back, we need to help them. The human rebellion had become something much larger than anyone had anticipated. Across the galaxy, oppressed worlds were beginning to see that the Council's power was not absolute, and that resistance was possible. The final battle began when Grand Arbitrator Veltar brought the entire Council enforcement armada to Earth's orbit, determined to end the human rebellion once and for all. Admiral Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the Titan's Resolve, watching as hundreds of massive alien warships emerged from hyperspace around his home planet. All human ships. This is Admiral Morrison. He broadcast to every vessel in the solar system. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every species that has suffered under Council tyranny. Show them what happens when you try to break the human spirit. The Council fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Their ships stretched from Earth's moon to the asteroid belt, each one capable of destroying entire cities with a single weapon blast. Veltar had brought everything he had, expecting to crush the human rebellion through overwhelming force. Humans of Earth. Veltar's voice echoed across all communication channels. Your defiance ends today. Surrender now, and some of your species will be allowed to live as servants. Continue fighting, and we will exterminate every human in the galaxy. President Ryan Hayes responded from the Planetary Defense Center deep beneath Earth's surface. Veltar, you made a mistake when you showed us what kind of monsters you really are. Humans don't surrender to genocidal tyrants. We destroy them. The battle erupted across Earth's entire orbital space as thousands of ships engaged in the largest space combat ever witnessed. Human vessels darted between the massive Council ships like fighters attacking bombers, using their speed and agility to avoid the devastating alien weapons. Captain Steve Rodriguez piloted the Liberty's Edge directly toward the Council's command ship, the massive dreadnought that served as Veltar's mobile headquarters. His crew knew it was a suicide mission, but they also knew it was the only way to break the Council's coordination. Dana, prepare the RAM protocol, Steve ordered his weapons officer. We're going to show them how humans deal with tyrants. Lieutenant Dana Walsh armed every explosive device on the ship while Engineer Bobby Chen redirected all power to the engines. Steve, if we hit their command center at full speed, the explosion should take out their entire command structure. Do it, Steve replied without hesitation. For every innocent life they've taken. The Liberty's Edge accelerated toward the Council flagship, absorbing massive weapon impacts as it closed the distance. Steve's ship was already breaking apart when it struck the alien dreadnought's bridge section. The explosion that followed was visible from Earth's surface, a brilliant flash that lit up the night sky like a second sun. Grand Arbitrator Veltar died in that explosion, along with most of the Council's senior military leadership. Without their central command, the alien fleet began to lose coordination, just as Dr. Ben Clark had predicted. All ships press the attack, Admiral Morrison ordered. Their command structure is broken. Hit them while they're confused. Captain Tony Martinez led a squadron of destroyers against a cluster of Council battleships that were firing randomly without proper targeting coordination. His pilots used the chaos to get close enough for devastating attacks against the alien vessel's weak points. Remember what they did to Kepler, Tony broadcast to his squadron. Remember every innocent life they've taken. Make them pay. But the real turning point came when Dr. Amy Foster, working from her laboratory aboard the New Horizon, completed her mission to expose the Council's crimes to the entire galaxy. Using the Council's own communication networks against them, she transmitted the evidence of the Kepler massacre and dozens of other genocides to every inhabited world in known space. This is Dr. Foster of the Earth Alliance. She broadcast on all frequencies. We are transmitting proof of the Galactic Council's crimes against sentient life. For over 1,000 years, they have maintained power through genocide, starvation, and fear. Today, that ends. The transmission included not just the footage of the Kepler massacre, but also intercepted Council communications discussing population management operations on dozens of other worlds. The evidence showed systematic genocide carried out over centuries, with billions of innocent beings murdered to maintain the Council's control over galactic resources. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Across the galaxy, rebellions erupted on worlds that had been under Council oppression for generations. Species that had lived in fear for centuries suddenly saw that the supposedly invincible council could be defeated. Commander Rachel Miller received the first communication from an alien resistance group during the height of the Earth battle. "This is Commander Zekthar of the Andorian Liberation Front," the message said. "We have been fighting the Council in secret for 50 years. Your tactics are working. We are attacking Council supply bases throughout our sector." Similar messages poured in from across the galaxy. The Centauri rebels had seized 3 Council worlds. The Vegan resistance had destroyed an entire enforcement fleet. The Rigel colonies had declared independence and were successfully defending themselves using human tactical innovations. "Amy, you did it," Captain Lisa Grant said as they watched the galactic uprising unfold. "The whole galaxy is rising up against them." The Battle of Earth continued for hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Without central coordination and facing attacks throughout their empire, the Council forces began to retreat. Those ships that tried to continue fighting were destroyed by human forces that had learned to exploit every weakness in their enemies. Tactics Admiral Morrison found himself in command of the largest liberation fleet in galactic history as alien. Resistance groups pledged their support to the human-led alliance. Ships from dozens of species arrived at Earth, all flying the same message: never again. The war's end came not with a great battle, but with a simple broadcast. The few surviving Council leaders, hiding in their heavily fortified capital world, sent an unconditional surrender to Earth. They offered to disband the Council government and submit to judgment by a galactic tribunal. President Hayes rejected their surrender. "There will be no negotiations with genocidal war criminals," he announced. "The Council will face justice for their crimes." The new Galactic Liberation Alliance, led by Earth but including representatives from every species that had suffered under Council rule, established its headquarters on the rebuilt colony world of Kepler 442b. Survivors had been found hiding in underground shelters, and they welcomed the liberation forces with tears of joy. Commander Alex Turner, now promoted to Admiral, took command of the Alliance fleet tasked with hunting down remaining Council loyalists and freeing the last oppressed worlds. The work would take years, but for the first time in galactic history, tyranny was in retreat. Dr. Ben Clark established a new research center on Kepler 442b, working with scientists from dozens of species to develop the agricultural technology that the Council had tried to suppress. Within months, food shortages began disappearing throughout the galaxy as the life-saving innovations were shared freely among all worlds. The final scene of the liberation took place in the ruins of the Council's former capital, where President Hayes addressed representatives from hundreds of liberated worlds. "The Council's reign of terror lasted 1,000 years, he said. But it took only one species willing to say no to bring it down. Never forget that tyranny only survives when good people choose to remain silent. Earth had sought to join the galactic community, and instead had liberated it. Humanity's greatest export was no longer technology or resources, but something far more valuable: the knowledge that freedom was always worth fighting for, no matter how impossible victory might seem.